Why don't you just help them stop smoking? I mean, it would be a simpler way. But anyway, they wanted to do this. Well, the FDA said, if you're going to make that claim, you have to have some data to back it up, that it really does decrease your risk of cancer. And they said, okay, so they ran 2 trials. One was in, I think, Europe, one was in the United States. Anyway, the first trial was supposed to run 10 years. They had to stop it after 8 because the smokers getting beta-carotene had an increased risk of getting cancer. And the carrot study in the United States was supposed to go 10 years, and I think it went 4, because it was clear that those getting the beta-carotene were getting more cancers than those that weren't. And so what they concluded is that you can't just single out one phytochemical or vitamin and say this is the cure-all. It takes the combination generally in the whole plant. They've estimated that one tomato has 10,000 phytochemicals in it, and we can't duplicate that. When beta-carotene is used in combination with the other chemical, the phytochemicals, then it is helpful. And it's kind of like, if they give me if our church is playing something, and they give me a third trumpet part, I take it at home and play it at home, it sounds horrible because it's not the melody line. But when you get it in the orchestra with all the other parts, it sounds beautiful. And that's how the phytochemicals are arranged in the plants, the way God designed them. Well, the idea that plants can decrease your risk of cancer was actually taken to the limit by Max Gerson in the early 1920s, 30s or so. Who was he? He was actually born, whoops, I don't see any picture here. He was born in Wangrans, Germany in 1881. He was the 3rd child of 9 in a German Jewish family. And let me see if I can make this thing work. There he is. Can you see that, or is that? Yeah. All right. Anyway, he was the 3rd child in a family of 9, German Jewish family. At 6.5 years of age, he thought he could help his mother's flowers. So he experimented with the effect of different fertilizers. Unfortunately, all the flowers died. Sad to say, support for his experiments quickly dried up. At the end of school, he took the country's required math test. There was a very difficult problem he had never seen the likes of, but he had proceeded to set up an equation to find the answer. His teacher had never seen such an intricate solution and couldn't judge it to be right or wrong. So he sent it to a famous math professor at the University of Berlin. The response was that he had produced an entirely new and original solution, and he should absolutely study mathematics. However, upon graduation, his family thought he'd have a brighter future if he studied medicine. Well, he studied in the University of Germany for his medical degree. He's a medical student and intern. He started experimenting with dietary means of curing migraine headaches and other diseases. Completed his internship in 1907. During World War I, as captain in the German Army Medical Corps, Dr. Gerson was a close associate of the prominent neurosurgeon Ottfried Foster, MD, for 5 years. In 1928, 10 years after establishing his own practice in Germany, Dr. Gerson treated 3 hopelessly ill people suffering from cancer through dietary means that he had been developing. In 1933, he barely escaped capture and imprisonment in a Nazi death camp for being Jewish. He moved his family to Vienna, Austria, where he completed his book on tuberculosis. In 1938, he moved his family to the United States. He passed the New York State Board and opened a medical practice on Park Avenue. He continued to develop his dietary therapy and obtained success in many types of serious health difficulties, especially cancer. He treated hundreds of patients given up to die after receiving surgery and radiation. Chemotherapy hadn't been invented yet. After years of study and research, the Gerson therapy brought really sick people up to 50% recovery rate, even for far advanced cancer cases. And if a person had been treated previously with chemo, the recovery rate was down to about 40%. Now, the reason I'm talking about cancers here is because if you suppress the immune system, you get cancer. They have shown that with Burkitt's lymphoma, people that had Epstein-Barr virus and had a suppressed immune system from the malaria that's chronic there, their immune system is so tied up fighting the malaria that the cancer can grow, the virus can grow into a cancer. That's Epstein-Barr virus. And they then get the cancer, Burkitt's lymphoma. Whereas in the United States, you can get Epstein-Barr virus, you get mononucleosis, but you don't get cancers from it until you suppress the immune system. Also, we know that HIV infections, which kill the T lymphocytes, result in a higher rate of cancers, dramatically increased across the board. Also, if you get an organ transplant, your immune system would normally attack that transplant and kill it. You don't want that. You want the kidney that's transplanted to survive. So we have to intentionally suppress the immune system, and those people have higher rates of cancers. So what you do to increase the immune system will help you fight cancers, but it should have also an effect on viral syndromes, and that's why we're talking about it. His main use of this was in cancers, but again, if you can do this in your own lives, you should be able to suppress other bacterial infections. 1946, Dr. Gerson became the first physician to demonstrate recovered cancer patients before the United States Senate Committee. They were holding hearings on a bill to find means of curing and preventing cancer under the sponsorship of the Senator Claude Pepper. The AMA lobbyists who supported surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, actually, when the vote was taken in Congress, they had a party for all the congressmen, got them away from the vote, and the vote failed to pass. If it had passed, the Senate bill would have supported extensive research into the Gerson therapy and could have spread this cure for cancer in 1946, years ago. So how did Gerson become interested in dietary treatment of disease? Well, as an undergraduate university student, he was plagued with severe migraine headaches. Later, as a medical resident, he spent sometimes 3 days a week in a darkened room, experiencing nausea, vomiting, eye sensitivity, and awful one-sided head pain, which felt as though his head was splitting in two. Medical professors said, learn to live with it. After searching, he came across a case report of an Italian medical journal of a woman who found relief from her migraine headaches by changing her diet, though no details were given. He hypothesized that maybe these migraines were caused by foods that you couldn't digest. But what would these be? Well, he first thought that every baby can digest cow's milk, so his own body should be able to handle it well. But a 10-day dietary trial of only milk brought no changes in his migraines. Then it occurred to him that animals never drink milk after weaning. He also noted that human digestive tract is similar to that of vegetarians, not like carnivores. Meaning, carnivores have short digestive tracts, maybe 10 feet long. Humans, it's 30 feet long like other vegetarian animals. That's because you want to digest the food properly and have time to absorb it. Carnivores, on the other hand, before the flood, before the fall in the Garden of Eden, there were no carnivores because nothing died. But after sin came into the world, things died. And in my mind, God said, well, we can't have dead carcasses lying around. We're going to have some animals clean them up. So some animals were given that responsibility, became carnivores. You got vultures, crabs, all kinds of animals that are carnivores now. But they have very short digestive tracts because the food needs to get in and get out quickly before it becomes putrefied and causes disease to the animal. So the digestive tracts of humans resemble vegetarians. So he thought, well, maybe a vegetarian diet is what I need. So he thought those with diseases should live on fruit, vegetables, and grains. So he tried an all-apple diet, raw and baked apples, applesauce, apple juice, apple compote, and his migraines resolved. Then he slowly added other food items. If he wasn't tolerant to one of the foods, he would get migraine as little as 20 minutes. He found that cooked foods containing salt caused migraines for him. So for him, he ate vegetables, potatoes, grains, etc. He called it the migraine diet. He avoided added salt. Now, we understand today that you do need salt, but that was not part of his diet there. Patients complaining of migraines were offered this option, and on follow-up told that they were free of their headaches as long as they didn't cheat. One of Dr. Gerson's patients reported that after being on the anti-migraine diet for a short time, his skin tuberculosis disappeared. Dr. Gerson told him skin TB is incurable and his skin condition must have been due to something else. The patient then showed him the bacteriological studies proving his diagnosis. Thus, for the first time in medical history, Dr. Gerson saw skin TB cured by a treatment. After being convinced that this new diet was helpful for skin TB, he asked the patient, "You know anybody else with skin TB?" And he said, "Oh yeah, down at the TB clinic down the block." He said, "Well, you want to send them my way?" So he started treating skin TB, and after several weeks, these skin TB patients also recovered using the anti-migraine diet. News of Dr. Gerson's success with skin TB came to the attention of Professor Ferdinand Sauerbach, MD, the world-famous lung TB specialist who practiced in Munich. After long discussions with Dr. Gerson, the professor treated 450 skin TB patients with Gerson's method. 446 out of 450 fully recovered. Only 4 failed to recover. That's about 1% failure. This is reported in Professor Sauerbach's autobiography, Master Surgeon. Dr. Gerson found the diet approach also worked for other forms of TB, including involvement of the lung, kidneys, and the bone. Albert Schweitzer's wife, Helene, seen on the left there, contracted pulmonary TB in the tropics and was in terminal condition when brought to Dr. Gerson. She recovered and went on to live well into her 80s. Dr. Schweitzer thought very highly of Gerson. While treating migraines and TB patients, patients noted other problems resolving as well. Hypertension, by the way, hypertension from insulin resistance, we do find resolves with the plant-based diet without any free oils. Asthma, allergies, kidney damage, arthritis, residual stroke. This was one that's interesting. They've actually seen people with residual stroke symptoms, paralysis, improving in their symptoms. Atherosclerosis and more. We do know today, Ornish's study with coronary artery disease in 1990 showed reversal of coronary artery disease with a plant-based diet. Before and after angiograms in 1 year's time showed opening of the arteries. Later, individuals with cancer were treated, as noted earlier, and it appeared that he was treating the underlying cause of the patient's illness rather than suppressing the symptoms. Albert Schweitzer wrote, "I see in him one of the most eminent geniuses in the history of medicine. Many of his basic ideas have been adopted without having his name connected with them. Yet he has achieved more than seemed possible under adverse conditions. He leaves a legacy which commands attention and which will assure him his due place. Those whom he has cured will now attest to the truth of his ideas." Charles, HRH, you know what that stands for? His Royal Highness. Okay, so His Royal Highness Charles, Prince of Wales. I know of one patient who turned to Gerson therapy, having been told she was suffering from terminal cancer and would not survive another course of chemotherapy. Happily, 7 years later, she is alive and well, so it is vital that rather than dismiss these experiences, we should further investigate the beneficial nature of these treatments. Now, again, this was occurring in 1930s, and we're almost 90 years out. Are there any studies demonstrating the efficacy of the Gerson approach? Well, a 5-year survival rates highlights A study, the 5-year survival rates, highlights the profound therapeutic value of Gerson's program for treating malignant melanoma, one of the most deadly cancers. In this study, Gar Hildebrand of the Gerson Research Organization and Shirley Caven from the University of California at San Diego's Cancer Prevention and Control Program compared 5-year melanoma survival rates of the Gerson therapy patients to rates found in comparable conventionally treated groups in the medical literature. In the study, they examined 153 white adult cancer patients, 25 to 72 years of age, in various stages of melanoma. And this is what they found. If it was stage 1, conventional therapy, less than 80% survived. Gerson therapy, 100% survived. And if it was stage 2, same. Stage 3A, regionally spread just locally. 5-year survival, conventional therapy, less than 40%. Gerson over 80%. That's more than double. Regionally metastasized, 41% versus 70%. Stage 4, distant metastasis, this is very deadly. 5-year survival, 6%. Gerson's therapy was about 39%, dramatic improvement. And if medical research and funding was totally driven by science, this would merit follow-up and more studies. Problem is that medical research is also driven by political economic motives as well, and this is the only study I found. He advocated the use of natural fertilizers containing all 52 minerals needed in plants and humans, figuring that if you get the fertilizers in the plants, those trace minerals will show up in the plants, and then when you eat them, we'll be able to use them to fight diseases. So the key to the Gerson therapy is really to flood the body with nutrients found in vegetables and to detoxify the body. The goal is to supply the phytochemicals from 17 to 20 pounds of vegetables per day. Problem is you can't eat that volume of food per day. Now this is patients who you really want to boost it, like stage 4 cancers or people with serious cancers. But it might have a similar challenge with patients with COVID as well. To give this amount of phytochemicals, if I gave you 20 pounds of vegetables and say, here, eat this, it's more than you can eat. But if you do juicing, you can do it. 3 meals a day plus juicing, you can get 17 to 20 pounds of vegetables. And, okay, we talked about coffee in a minute, but I want to talk about juicing now. Okay, so juicing with phytochemicals. Most alternative approaches to cancer involve getting as many phytochemicals in the body as possible. Phytochemicals can be destroyed by cooking, so raw foods, Hallelujah Acres uses that, or juicing. Problem is, with raw foods, you can only eat a few pounds per day, but with juicing, you can eat a lot of vegetables per day. Gerson therapy gives 1 cup of fresh pressed juice every hour. At Heartland, we modify it to 2 cups every 2 hours during the morning, and then we switch to herbal teas that have been shown to be helpful, echinacea teas, as well as wormwood and wormwood and echinacea are the big ones. We did the teas in the afternoon, right? So we do about half the Gerson juicing and then half the teas. And I've been amazed at the response that we've seen. I mean, consistently, patients getting better. Patients that we thought, well, we'll try to prolong their life, and they had dramatic improvements on the program.
How much tea?
It was 1 cup a day of echinacea, 1 cup of wormwood. I'm blocking on the other one. There's a third one we use. I think it'll show up on the next slide. Oh, Podarco tea. And I think the Po is spelled wrong, but anyway, Podark tea. We use 1 cup of each. And then in the afternoon, 2 cups of green drink, green juice, 4 cups of carrot apple at one time. Oh, and then 2 cups of green juice, 2 cups of carrot apple, and carrot apple. If you make the green drink, you have to do that immediately because it oxidizes very quickly. So you drink that fresh immediately. The carrot juice you can save we use these 2-cup canning jars with lids. Put the carrot juice in those, try to get as much air out as possible, put it in the fridge, and then drink that 2 hours later and drink the third one 2 hours later. And that's your juicing. The recipes, you can get the recipes in the Gerson book. We've made copies of it. We put it in our little cancer pamphlet. If you want the cancer immune boosting pamphlet, just talk to my wife and she can figure out how to get it to you. Coffee enemas, those are used just for patients with a heavy tumor load, because as the tumors break up and lyse, they release toxins into the bloodstream and people will feel sick. So they use coffee enemas to stimulate and turn on the detoxification process, which again, if you're fighting a virus, it's probably not necessary. And then there are some immune boosting herbs that can be taken as well. Excuse me.
Coffee enemas, how long do you, like a week or?
The only time we use coffee enemas basically is for people with stage 4, stage 3 cancers, and because there are side effects to caffeine. Ellen White speaks against the use of caffeine because of the side effects. It just drains your body of its energy reserves. And so the only time Ellen White used it was for nausea twice, once crossing the ocean and once over here in America, as a medicine, not as a food. And so, but she says some very strong words against it because of the addictive effects and how it drains the body of energies and how it frazzles people. However, because of that, I don't recommend it unless there's a really good reason, like high tumor load that's going to cause toxic reaction as the tumor breaks up. And so we use it then, and we use it only as long as there's those kind of symptoms. People at Gerson therapy will actually ask for it more often. They give it every 2 hours there. No, excuse me, every 4 hours there, because it makes them feel so much better, and they'll ask for it even more often. It's simple enough to give. Patients give it to themselves, so it's not a big thing. So I think I misspoke earlier. The teas are Easy Act tea, Podark and wormwood. The capsules are Echinacea, astragalus, and golden seal, and usually use 1 or 2 at a time, and alternate every 1 or 2 weeks with the capsules.
What's the difference between an aneurysm
Between what?
aneurysm
Difference between aneurysm and what?
and a tumor?
An aneurysm is it's an outpouching of the blood vessels, usually in the arteries. It's when the arterial wall gets weak and the pressure in the artery pushes it out and it bulges. You can get separation of the walls, which can be a problem. It can cause a clot or break off or something, and it can also rupture, in which you can get a bleed. And if you get an abdominal aortic aneurysm, if it's a thoracic aneurysm, those can be, I think it's lethal, but if it's an abdominal aneurysm, sometimes they'll bleed slowly and they may stop on their own. Sometimes they need to be operated on. That's an aneurysm.
If an aneurysm's too big, it's in the heart, and they can't operate, how could they shrink that?
You have an aneurysm, they have an aneurysm in the heart itself. I guess you'd need to look at what causes it. Sometimes if a person's had a heart attack, part of that tissue will die and it just becomes weaker and it'll become an outpouching. You probably need to figure out what's causing the aneurysm. If it's if it's related to atherosclerosis, a plant-based diet can reverse atherosclerosis. You probably need to talk to the cardiologist and find out what's causing the aneurysm first and find out. Keeping blood pressures controlled is another way to help prevent it from progressing, and if it's an arterial one, from bursting. But so Gerson's protocol, they had 1 cup of fresh pressed juice every hour. We modified it to 2 cups every 2 hours. In Gerson's program, you would have a juicer, and every hour you'd press the juice fresh. So it was a very labor-intensive program. So we modified it so we do juicing once in the morning and then use that for the morning and then switch to the teas in the afternoon. What kind of juicers are best? Well, centrifugal juicers don't grind finely enough, and there is much wasted juice in the pulp. We had a centrifugal juicer, and at one lifestyle center, my son was raising some alpacas, and we would take the pulp, and we give it to the alpacas, and they loved it because there was a lot of juice in the pulp. When we switched to pressed juice, which is what is recommended, it pressed all the juice out, and we take the pulp and feed it to the alpacas, and they wouldn't eat it because there was no juice left. You get 30% more juice when you press the juice. There are masticating juicers. These chew up the vegetables or fruits and extract juice in one step. They're more convenient, but the juice quality is better than centrifugal juicers, but less than the pressed juice. So it's not the optimal. Wheatgrass juicers are specifically designed for extracting juice from wheatgrass. Most patients find the juice harsh. Desirable components from the wheatgrass can be obtained from green leaf juice, which is taken at 2 pints per day for cancer patients. They found, Gerson used to use it, we never adopted using it because of this problem. Half the patients would get nausea and vomiting from the wheatgrass. Other half would not. So nutritionally it's great, it's just if only half your patients can tolerate it, you just as soon switch to something that everyone can tolerate. It's just easier to use. Citrus juicers are only for citrus, and Gerson felt citrus juice was the least important juice in the therapeutic regimen. He added orange juice 1 cup a day just as a concession, not really as a treatment. How do you get pressed juice? It's a 2-step process. One, you grind up the carrots, for instance. It makes a juicy pulp, and then you put that in a drill cloth and you press it. And the components touching the juice should either be stainless steel or glass. The Norwalk juicer, this is the Cadillac of juice pressers. First, you place the vegetables in the chute on the left. Let's see here. You press the vegetables in here. This is a grinder. It grinds it up, and you get a juicy pulp coming out down here. Then you put that in a 13-inch drill cloth, square drill cloth. You fold it up in thirds, one way and thirds another way. And then you put it in the juice press, which is here. And this presses the juice. You hit a little lever on the side over here. And that turns the press on. So you can actually be pressing your juice while you're here, while you're titerating them here. This saves considerable time. And if you have a lifestyle center, this is the juice press to get. If on the other hand you're doing it at home, there's another version, because this costs $2,600 new. They've increased the price. However, if you have serious cancer problems and you're going to be pressing 3 quarts a day, since this gets 35% more juice per carrot, if you're pressing 3 quarts a day, it's estimated that the more expensive juicer will pay for itself in less than a year, because organic food with a centrifugal juicer runs about $680 a month, and you can actually save enough to pay for the juicer if you're paying that much for organic foods. So why use a juice press? Well, again, you get 35% more juice, and that's a plus, but that's not the main reason. The juice doesn't separate out. When you do the centrifugal juicer, you put it on the shelf, the sediment settles to the bottom, and the fluid on top is clear. But juice press, when the sediment settles out, the fluid on top is opaque. You're getting something qualitatively different in the pressed juice than you are in centrifugal juice. But that's not the real reason. It has a richer taste, but that's not the real reason we use it. The real reason is that cancer patients, they called up Gerson and said, when we were doing this at a lifestyle center, we wanted to use a centrifugal juicer because it was easier, cheaper. But they said, we have a lot of patients that go on the centrifugal juicer don't get better. But when we put them on pressed juice, they start getting better. So that was the main reason we switched at this one place, and that's why we use it at Heartland, because it's more effective. Is there a less expensive solution? He wants to know. And yeah, this is the cheaper solution. And if you're doing it just for yourself, this works just fine. We have one of these as well. What you do is you do the titration with a Champion juicer, and the juicy pulp comes out here. You wrap it in a drill cloth, and then you put it in between these two stainless steel pans. And this guy builds them, and he's put a car jack down here, and he jacks it up by hand, and that pushes the two steel pans together, and the juice comes out there. And it works very well. You get these online, the Juice Press Factory. Yeah, they work. Even Gerson Therapy recommends this one as well. What's that? Yeah, okay. So ideally, they prepare 1 cup of juice hourly as a fresh drink. At Lifestyle Center, we do 2 cups of green drink in the morning, put it and have them drink it immediately, and then 4 cups of apple juice, carrot apple juice, about 1 pound of carrots. For every pound of carrots, you add an apple. And they drink 2 cups of that later, and then 2 cups of that 2 hours later again. In the afternoon, they drink the herbal teas. This allows them to get the herbal teas in, because you'll be drinking, it's close to like 2.5 quarts or so a day with this program the way it is now. So, in the beginning, God advised man as to which foods were designed to keep our bodies healthy, and God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the land, and every tree with its seed and its fruit. You shall have them for food." God's original plant-based diet is still the best. More than 6,000 years later, science is proving it. Common sense tells us that. And I wanted to show you a demonstration of how it's used. Oops, where did it?
So you're not eating when you're on this?
No, you're eating too. Yeah, 3 meals a day.
What?
Yeah,
And all that?
yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, unfortunately, many people are nutritionally depleted when they have cancer, and we're trying to build the nutrition up. Oh, here it is. Let's see. Oh, I don't have the website there. Let's see if it'll work. This is a demonstration, and I hope you can hear it.
Hey, YouTube.
Can you hear that?
In this video, I'm going
Okay.
Tips that my wife and I have learned over the last 2 years using our
How to use
Norwalk
it.
juicer. In my opinion, a Norwalk is probably the best juicer
You're not seeing
you
it.
can buy. So the first tip I want to give is those wing nuts there. Make sure that those are tight. And while you're juicing, if you hear a kind of a loud noise, just double check to make sure that they haven't come loose, because the cutter can kind of hit that housing if those do happen to come loose. And the second tip, which I'll go into great detail later, is to use those 2 measuring cups and the plate that I just set down there instead of the method that Norwalk recommends. So here we are grabbing the cloths. We prefer the cloths to the bags out of the freezer, and you want to store those in the freezer, and that's what Norwalk recommends to help keep, they just last longer that way, and it keeps bacteria or something from growing on them, I'm not sure. But anyhow, we put them in this little saucer with a little bit of water to thaw them out, and by the time we're ready to juice, they'll be thawed out and ready to go. So the next tip is with the screens. Don't just assume that the screen that Norwalk recommends is the best, because you kind of want to experiment. Here we're using a screen that's one smaller than the juicing screen, which works best for carrots. You wouldn't want to use that on greens because that'll clog it up, but it works great for carrots. So, of course, the big problem with the Norwalk is as you're putting stuff in, the cutter tends to shoot it back out the top. And so you want to keep that top covered. Another thing you want to do is keep, there you can see I'm putting that carrot in upside down because there's more material at the top of the carrot, which is at the bottom as I put it in there, which helps to keep it from squirting out the top. So the key is to just keep a little bit of material above the cutter, and that helps to keep it from shooting. And sometimes putting a couple carrots helps, just be careful. So because we're using cloths and not the bags, you can actually see how much material is in that measuring container below the juicer there. So you can see I've got about 3/4 of a cup, or 3/4 of the container. You can see there's a lot of juice there, more than Norwalk recommends putting into the bags. You can see that bag's pretty full. But I've found I can fill them about this full, and I've never had one come apart. And if I do get a little bit too much, I kind of squish it into the plate, and then I just pour the plate into the juicing container there. So the key is to reduce the pressure on the press going up, so it goes a little bit slower, because if you have it on full pressure, there you can see I'm increasing it a little bit, it'll squish that too quick and you'll get juice all over and you'll make a mess. So I overfill the bags, and then I slowly increase the pressure on the press until it is just about fully pressed, and then like I just did, I push it the rest of the way and then start counting. And of course, as I'm pressing the one juice, I am running the other carrots through. And there you can see I left that last carrot because I can see that I had plenty of juice inside the container there. And when you're using the bags, it's really hard to tell exactly how much juice you have. We find using this method, I can tell exactly how much juice I'm going to get just by looking how much material has been run through. Okay, and then once it's done pressing, I'll pull out the cloth and throw the pressed material into the garbage. And you can see using the cloths, it's really easy to empty that, just throw it in the garbage and start over again. I prefer that much more than the bags. And but of course, this is the reason that we prefer it, is I can just dump that material right in here, overfill the bag or the cloth. And instead of using 2 bags or 2 cloths like Norwalk recommends, we just way overfill it, dump the excess from the plates into there, and we're not really making a mess. They recommend putting kind of a big plate to catch everything underneath, but I've found that this method works really well, and we just get a little bit of juice on the counter. So you can see I just changed the screen to the juicing screen, because the one we use for carrots will tend to clog up a bit if we use it on the greens. And so of course, as I'm pressing my carrots, now we're starting to do the greens, and it's a pretty quick process. I'm really impressed with the juicer. I love the way it works, and of course I love the way the juice tastes out of it. And you can see we've got quite Bit of juice already. So there I am. What I did there is I'll squish the juice for about 20 seconds and then reduce the pressure and squish it for another 20 seconds, and that seems to work best. And somebody at Norwalk actually recommended that to us, even though it says don't press it for more than 10 seconds. So as I'm putting in my greens, you see I'm being very careful to keep a little bit of material kind of piled up above the cutter up there. So that it doesn't shoot back out, and you just always want to be ready because it'll shoot out when you're not expecting it. But really, it's not all that bad. So what I'm doing now is I pull out the screen and then tap on the top to try to get the residue that's built up in that housing to drop down into that dish that's down below it there. What'll happen is you'll just get residue that just gets stuck in there, and sometimes you'll have actually a lot. And we found when we were using the bags that we would have quite a bit still built up in there. Using the cloths and the method that we're using, there'll be a little bit, but it's not nearly as bad as it is with the cloths. I think that was one of the first reasons that we actually switched to the cloths from the bags. And so once it's been run through, then we dump it into the cloth, and you can see I've got quite a bit there, a lot more than Norwalk recommends. But as I said before, I've never had one of these cloths come apart putting that much into it. And so I definitely prefer juicing one instead of two. And so with the press there, when it gets near the top, I'm going to reduce it so that it's not giving it full power, so it comes up a little bit slower, and that way you don't make such a mess. And then as it gets near the top, I'll give it full power. And as I give it full power, I start counting in my head. And what I do is I count up to 20, and I found if I count to 20, that's about 18 seconds. And as I mentioned earlier, somebody at Norwalk said that you can run the press for 20 seconds, even though it says to only run the press for 10 seconds. So as I get near the end, I release the press and then put it back on full again and run it for another 20 seconds. And I found by the end of the second pressing, it's pretty much done pressing the juice, and there's really no point doing it anymore. If it starts dripping before it gets into 20 seconds, I'll stop, and no point putting extra strain on the juicer. And there you have it. That's how we make juice in the Norwalk juicer. The Norwalk is an amazing juicer. You can see it gets pretty much all the juice out of your veggies. And the juice, in my opinion, tastes a whole lot better than other juicers I've tried because you just don't get the residue because it's all trapped in the cloth. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Hey, YouTube.
So he just uses like a flour sack towel?
You ask for drill cloth, you go to Joann's, the fabric store,
Oh, really?
ask for drill cloth and just get a yard or two. It comes in 4-foot section, and you cut them 13-inch squares. You get about 3 of them across. You can actually get 9 from a square yard, thereabouts. And drill cloth. I didn't know what it was until I went into Joann's, but they knew what it was, and so they pulled it out and cut it up. Drill, I think it's drill cloth. And again, you can get the same result with that Juice Press Factory one, the little hand press. The hand press, $330 for the Champion and $330 for the hand press. It's about $660 for the combination. The juice does taste has a richer, fuller body to it, and you can tell the difference. You can blindfold someone, and they can tell the difference between centrifugal and pressed juice.
Would it be more beneficial if you eat the whole carrots, or if you just put it on a smoothie?
I'm sorry, I can't, having trouble hearing. What?
Said, would it be better if you ate the whole carrot than do it like that?
Yeah, you can eat the whole carrot. The problem is, you would be eating about 15 pounds of carrots to get 6 cups of carrot juice. It's about 5 pounds per pint, I think. It's 1 pound per pint. Anyway, it's several pounds, and you can't eat that many carrots to get the same effect.
Aren't you getting a higher nutrient content per quantity taken because the nutrients squeezed out without the fiber?
Yeah, I guess two things is I can take, I forget how many, 5 pounds, I think, may give you a quart. I don't know. I can't remember, but 5 pounds to eat is a major job, but to drink a quart is not a major job. It's pretty easy. And so it's harder to drink, it's harder to eat 5 pounds of carrots than it is to drink them. The other issue is I don't know if you're even chewing up the carrots. I don't know if you're pressing them as well as the pressed juice you get this way.
What about if you make it on a smoothie?
If you make it into a smoothie, you can do that. The problem is you still got the high volume that you have to, because you're eating all the fiber. And I don't want to speak against fiber. The problem is, in this case, we want to get the nutrients more than we want to get the fiber. And so we sacrifice the fiber so we get more nutrients. Yeah, you had a question?
Now, is this only if you're sick, or is this for, let's say I'm not sick, I'm a healthy guy.
You may not need it. Yeah.
Is the rule, eat 4 to 6 fruit a day? And keep
Yeah, you can do that, and it should be helpful. Now, I have noticed if we have like farm days where we're working on farm rather than working with patients, I get out there, I get little skin infections, and they be there for several days. If I drink like a quart of carrot juice, the next day it comes to a head, and it happens consistently, and there is a dramatic difference or change. So if you're wanting to rev up your immune system, that's the way to do it. It is labor intensive, and we don't do this every day. But then again, I'm not fighting cancer. What you can do is if you don't want to go to the trouble of doing this, you can get Bolthouse Farm pressed juice at Walmart. They sell it, and it's not fresh, but I've gotten the same response in terms of coming to heads. Bolthouse, I think it's Bolthouse Farm, Bolthouse Farm pressed juice. And they have one for carrots, they've got greens, they've got all kinds of different.
What section?
It's in the fresh vegetable section of Walmart.
If you go into Walmart up here, it's over on as you go in, the deli, the bakery is there. It's on that far wall on the left.
Yeah. Yeah, Gerson they'd be upset if I was telling you to do that route because they want it fresh pressed, but
As
it,
far as eating the carrots, wouldn't a lot of that depend on the quality of the carrot? Because some are organic, some are nutrient deficient.
yeah.
There may be carrots that are so weak that you couldn't hardly eat enough no matter what.
Yeah, and that's sad. Interestingly, the dramatic responses that they got years ago is I don't know that we're getting as dramatic responses today as we used to. I think cancer seems to be having more of a hold than it used to, and like you said, there's nutrient deficient plants now. But if you grow your own, my wife is on a crusade to get a big vegetable garden in our home, and she's doing it all organically, and we're getting raised beds, and we're going to put the plastic on and all, and then we want to make sure we're getting all the nutrients in the soil for it. But yeah, I don't know a way to find out if the carrots are nutrient full or nutrient depleted. That's a good question. But I do know that the ones that I've used, Bolthouse Farms, in terms of just my experiment with my hands, infections, it does clear them up. And so we're getting a response that way. All right, well, yeah.
Do you wash them with anything special? Do you keep the skins on?
No, you just wash them. If we buy them from the store, we just wash them, and then we don't peel them. At least I don't. And I cut the head off, and just feed them through like he was feeding them through. If you don't wash, if you pick them out of the ground and wash them just a little bit, you'll probably leave some of the B12 on the on the carrot, and you get your B12 that way. Yeah, but we don't do anything special to them. Yeah, good questions. Okay, well, thank you for coming. I don't know it's 3 o'clock, and I don't know if you wanted something more or if you're ready to call it quits for the day, or we just have, I can do one on sleep. It shows the benefits of sleep. Sleep is important for the immune system, and that's another topic we can do. We can show you the other treatments we use for cancers. Easy-Act T, which strengthens the immune system. We can show you some of the evidence for that. And those are things that can be helpful. I'm not sure where the interest is or what.
I'm interested in sleep.
What's that?
I'm interested in sleep.
The sleep one?
There's so many people suffering with sleep.
Yeah.
It's a really good topic to introduce people.
Yeah. It's an epidemic proportions, and we can actually show you how productivity increases when you get more sleep. They actually, at one factory, they were working the people 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Prediction was down, and when they cut back to 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, productivity actually went up.
So what do you think causes insomnia? What causes insomnia?
Insomnia? Why aren't we getting the sleep? The problem is we've got so many fun things to do now. I mean, the old days, when the sun went down, you went to sleep. When it rose, you got up.
You go to bed at 9 o'clock and you still can't go to sleep.
Ah, that's an issue. Things to try. We usually have regular. Yeah, there's valerian root. There's melatonin that we use and we try. Not eating anything 3 to 4 hours before bedtime is another option. Why don't we then take a break? And those that want to hear the sleep talk, we can go from that. And if you have any other questions, we can deal with those. Yes, ma'am. Why don't you guys take a break, and I'll answer any questions you have. And
What do you do for cataracts? Do you have to have surgery, or can you?
I'll reverse the cataracts.
Yes.
I've not heard of cataracts reversing. I have heard of macular degeneration getting better with a plant-based diet. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know on that one. Yes? Yeah.
Before the sleep slide, you had a word that started with QU. What was that? It was a.
Quercetin?
What is that?
What is it called? Let me look at it here.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
What is it? Q?
I don't know what that is.
Pull it up here.
Is it like a powder or a pill, or what is it? Just eat that or get some. Okay, all right. Probably the apple peelings.
See here. And it helps zinc get into the cells. And it is on the iMask Plus protocol that you can download at that website. And they give you the dosages there. It's no, that's not what we want. Okay, yeah, that's... It's quercetin. It's 250 milligrams a day. A day. And if you've got the disease, you want to take it twice a day. 250 milligrams twice a day.
And what's that for?
That helps the immune system. It helps get zinc into the cells to kill the virus. Melatonin, I didn't research its effect. If you take it, you want to take it at bedtime because it can make you sleepy. So, and that's helpful. Okay. Is it? What's that?
I'd be interested